And I like to start by introducing our guest, Heather Conklin. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here. Heather is the SVP and GM of Trailhead at Salesforce. So for those who aren't familiar with Trailhead, and Heather, correct me if I get this wrong, but it's a learning platform for skill development, certification, and job opportunities within the Salesforce ecosystem. So for people who are interested in working in that or finding people to help them work in that ecosystem, that's a great place to go. And also, and primarily why she's here, Heather launched the Salesforce Associate Product Manager, or the APM program, in 2018, I believe, and now oversees all aspects of the program. And if I'm correct, it includes a 12-week summer internship program and then a 2-year full-time program that's designed to build new PM talent for Salesforce. So, thank you for joining us. Pretty impressive, all that you do and that you've accomplished. I have to say, when I saw your resume, I was like, whoa.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm in the privileged position of like getting to meet all of these women who are just so accomplished, and it's a joy. Yeah. So I wanted to start us off because we're primarily going to talk about the APM program. But I wanted to kind of start off with the origin of it, because when we talked prior to this event, you talked about this phone call that you had, or a one-on-one meeting that you had, and that you took that opportunity to propose this program. So, what were the conditions and events that inspired the origin of the program and caused you to speak up and propose this idea?
Yeah. Well, first, hello to everybody. Super excited to be here and talking with you today. Thanks for joining and listening to our stories. When I first took on the APM program, I didn't even know APM programs existed. So it wasn't like I knew I wanted to start an APM program. I really was just, I was a VP at the time at Salesforce, looking around and just noticing different things about our organization. And I noticed something I always say is, at that time, how we developed product at Salesforce was kind of like the wild, wild west, as I refer to it. And by that, I just mean that when I looked around, every single team at Salesforce was doing things a bit differently. There was no way of developing products at Salesforce. And my husband actually works for Square in product. And so we're product nerds and talk about this stuff probably way more than we should. And I had learned a lot from him about how they do things at Square. And so I had this other lens, on how other companies develop product. And I just thought that there was a lot of room for us to think about product management a little bit differently. Really, I would frame it around like having more kind of rigor to how we develop products. So like, what's important as we are developing our products? Like, we didn't have a great focus at the time on data, for example, and we've kind of been behind that a little bit over the years. We've gotten to a much better place now, but there was a lot of stuff like that where we just needed to decide what was important to us as an organization. And so anyway, I have a lot of passion for like people management and like team development. And so I kind of saw that gap that we had. And at the time in early 2018, Brett Taylor became our new chief product officer at Salesforce. And I got the opportunity to have a one-on-one meeting with him when he first became the CPO. And he was sort of just meeting with different people and asking, what do they see in the organization? What would they focus on? Just general learning and getting up to speed. And in that conversation, I decided I was just going to share with him my perspectives on the organization. And, I felt really strongly about it, which I think like propelled me to have the courage, I guess, to tell him, the different like issues, I guess, that I saw within the organization. And in doing that, he just said he was a part of the Google APM program. He was one of the very first Google APMs. And so he shared that he's always wanted to start one of those programs. And, at the time kind of flippantly, honestly, I was like, oh yeah, well, if you decide to do that, let me know and I would love to help. And I think I got an email from him like a week later saying, all right, like I want to do this, want to create this APM program. And so that's really how it all began, was just kind of spotting an issue that I had seen and something that I felt strongly enough about to bring it up to leadership at the time, and really just start to, I didn't have all the answers or solutions, but I at least knew that it was something that we needed to tackle.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing. Like, you didn't have all the answers, but you just knew it was something that needed to be addressed, and that getting it started other people would come in to help.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
talk a little bit about the first phase of the program. And I'm guessing that a lot of people here are going to want to hear you talk about, how much of your time and energy that took, or how you addressed perhaps that need, by bringing other people in, or those kinds of things.
Yeah. So the beginning it was super, whenever I talk about the APM program, I always kind of take a little walk down memory lane of looking at the timeline and stuff like that. And I'm always like, wow, that was a crazy time. It all happened very quickly. Even from, what I just referred to of like a week later, I got the email from him about starting it. At that time, what we did was we formed a small team. So we just said, okay, let's pull together, 6 or 7 people who care about this and have different lenses. So we had someone from, I was like the product person. We had someone from recruiting. We had someone from HR. We kind of like did a little bit of a representative cross-functional team who could help stand up the program. And that group, we just met super regularly, and none of us had any clue what we were doing. Like, we've never started an APM program. So we did a ton of research, and we reached out to lots of our connections at other companies, and just started to understand, what do APM programs look like elsewhere? And what of that do we like and we want to replicate? And what did we not maybe like or didn't suit our needs and we wanted to do something different? And at the time, I mentioned that Brett was in the APM program at Google, and Marissa Mayer was actually the creator of the APM program at Google. And he still, has a great relationship with her. And so he was like, I think I can get Marissa to come in and talk to us about the APM program. And we were all like, oh my God,
Yes.
and we got this amazing meeting with her. And, like, candidly at the time, I was like, how much could she possibly remember? Like, that was a long time ago when she started the APM program. But she has an incredible memory. And she ran us through so much. We got to sit down with her in a conference room. And I remember so clearly, one of the big things that she told us that stuck with me was that you have to have a champion for things like this. Like, these initiatives, really, you have to have somebody who's deeply invested in kind of waking up every day thinking about, how do you solve that problem? And so out of that meeting with her, I ended up that night, I wrote Brett an email that said, I understand that we need a champion for this. And at the time, like I mentioned, I was sort of just in a committee sort of approach to leading the program. And I decided I was going to actually raise my hand and say, I want to be that champion. And I went through all the things that we all tell ourselves all the time about why I wasn't senior enough, or, I didn't have the experience, and maybe I wasn't the person that he had in mind to lead the program, but I decided to go for it, and wrote him the email. Took him the whole day to respond, which of course all day long I was like, God, that was the stupidest thing that I possibly could have done.
Beating yourself up the whole way.
Exactly. And when he finally did respond that night, he was, it was a very energetic yes. And he said it made his day to read that email. And so it was cool, because it was just, it was those stories that we tell ourselves that aren't true that could have totally gotten in the way. And the fact that, luckily I didn't let that happen, was a big driver in actually getting this program going. So at that point, I started leading it. And we decided to start with an internship program. So typically APM programs are like a 1 to 2 year program of full-time people that are coming into your organization. And we decided, for speed of getting this program off the ground, a little bit lower risk of having, some interns who would only be there for a time-boxed period. There were a lot of reasons why it was good to start smaller. And so, kind of like product MVPs, we decided we would start with, with like the internship program. So we had started talking about all this in January, and by the end of March, we had 30 people on site interviewing to be in our APM program.
Holy cow.
And by May, we had butts and seats, 12 interns here really working as part of the program. So it was fast and really just fun. One of those times where you're like working really hard on something, but if you're passionate about it and excited about it, it doesn't really feel like work at that point. So we got it off the ground, and I will just say, kind of to the spirit of what I said before, we did not have all the answers, and that first summer with those 12 interns, I joke a lot that they were like my guinea pigs. I had no idea what I was doing. I was making up a lot of stuff as we went along and really doing a lot of like trial and error, experimentation, what works, what doesn't here. And those 12 people are still super near and dear to my heart because obviously they were like the first ones, but also because they really had to take like a leap of faith with us in this program. We had a promise of what the program could be, but we had no evidence of that being so. And so we really had to, we kind of like tried to pull out all the stops for them. We brought in a big lineup of different executives to talk to them and tried to make the program as compelling as possible. But we really were kind of making it up as we went along. So it was a wild time that first year.
I love in that story the whole connection to like Marissa. I mean, you never know what's going to happen when you do things like this. And sometimes you get these crazy connections and opportunities that you just could never have imagined. And that always seems like, not that it always happens, so it's sort of a bonus, but still, I think that whole part of creating, thinking about things, experimenting, I don't know, maybe that stuff is just near and dear to me because I find it to be exhilarating, right? When you do that kind of stuff. So, so talk a little bit about, I think you also had a little bit of a vision that this would help to kind of diversify the people within the product community. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how you guys balanced that or recruited for that or thought about that in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing we did when we first got that small group together, when we created the program, was we wrote out a vision of like, what is this program about? Like, why are we doing this? And what is it that, we're really going for? And I think there were two main tenets of the program when we started it. And luckily they're still true today. One was to create the next generation of product leaders at Salesforce. That one's kind of obvious with an APM program. But the other main thing that we really were focused on was increasing diversity in product. And so we had a strong focus and emphasis on that from the start. Mm-hmm. And, I'm so happy to say that our cohorts, and it was so interesting, in August, we graduated our first full-time cohort, and we posted a picture. We did one of those, like, how it started, how is it going, things on Twitter. And, we posted this, and there were a bunch of comments on it of people actually saying like, wow, like that's what representation looks like. And it was really cool because it wasn't, we didn't say anything about that in the post, but even just looking at the picture of, these 10 people alone was clear that was something that we had actually, accomplished. So we really focused a lot on how do we recruit, and we were recruiting, we would recruit at top schools and top programs, but what groups we would try to, start to associate with, like, can we associate with different, different, trying to think of what the right word is, but, different groups at the company or at the school, where we would find more diverse talent. So we started looking at those kinds of affinity groups, I guess, at the schools. We also made sure that in our interview panels, like, it was really important to us when we were lining up who was going to interview the APMs, that those interviewers were as representative of who we were looking to recruit as possible. So, we focused a lot on making sure we had equal numbers of men and women, interviewing. We, try to get as representative of a group as possible. And so that has always been part of our recruiting muscle, and it's turned out extremely well. And then we've taken that further to say, okay, how does that impact the managers of these APMs as well? Like, we want to make sure that it's not just like a recruiting experience, but it's actually, permeates through everything that we're doing. And so we make sure that our manager pool is as representative for the APMs as possible. And then I think the last thing that we really do is we focus a lot on like inclusivity and belonging. We really talk a lot about leading with curiosity and empathy. And we've done a lot of this great work around, just understanding people and understanding how different people operate, and making sure that it's a place where you don't have to be one type. Like, we talk about that all the time. There's no perfect APM for us, no one kind of person. It's really all about how do we create this really inclusive environment for everybody and help everybody learn about all the different people in the program.
Yeah, I mean, your comment about even just finding managers in the organization to work with these APMs that were representative just strikes me as such, it's very thoughtful, because I'm sure to all of them, it made a big difference to them that they had people that they were working with that were senior to them, that looked like them, or that they saw somebody that looked like them. And it makes a huge difference, and also can help them to navigate in that environment. So the other thing that you mentioned when we talked earlier was just that when you set out to do this, you also found that you were really teaching people, I guess, in some ways, people skills or social skills, if you will. Or could you comment on that a little bit? Because I thought that was such an interesting insight into, that you really had to help people figure out how to navigate this in all the different ways that humans interact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when we started the program, we totally thought we're going to go teach people how to be the best product managers. We had lined up all kinds of topics about product management very specifically. And that's what we thought the program was going to be. And it's what most APM programs are. But as we got into it, it's interesting how some of these things kind of follow your own personal journey. But after starting the program, the following year in 2019, I actually had my second daughter, and I was on maternity leave for 6 months with her. And at that time, I discovered all things Brene Brown, and I'm now like the world's #1 Brene Brown fan. And I just saw kind of a different take on leadership and like human leadership. And I really was like, something about it really clicked for me. Because as I was coming back from maternity leave, we had that first full-time cohort starting, for their first full-time job, and just watching the like emotional roller coaster, I would say, that these people were going through of just trying to actually, get into their first full-time job, and all the things that it brought up for them as far as like, feeling inadequate in many different ways. Like, it clicked for me that I could bring that into the program and make, how you view yourself as like a person at work, and how you really thinking more about creating great leaders with those soft skills and the self-awareness and self-understanding really at the forefront. And now today, our program is actually, I would say, almost equal parts, honestly, product management skills and, everything to do with personal development, really about understanding yourself and how having a better understanding of yourself impacts how you show up as a leader in the organization. And it's been absolutely profound to add that into the program. I probably wouldn't be as like excited and engaged in the program as I still am to this day, had we not ever brought that element in, because it's just so clear that, if we only focused on the work and the product side of things, we would have been missing like a huge element of who we all are and how we succeed at work every day.
Yeah. You also talked a little bit about the differences that you saw between the men who came into the program and the women. So I think it would be great if you spoke to that for just a minute. I don't think anybody will be surprised, but
you won't be surprised. It was like a sad reality check, I think, where, we have almost equal parts men and women in every single cohort. Sometimes we have one or two more women than men and vice versa, but overall we're fairly even split. And so I've got a number of people that I've gotten to watch move through this program now. And, just sad the fact is, like, the women struggle so much more with confidence than the men in the program. And, it's nothing to do with their skills or their background. In many cases, they have better experience and better, like hard skills, but they second guess themselves so much more than the men. At least, they bring that forward a lot. And so it's been something that's really interesting because we've had to do a lot to actually help them kind of like move through that. And so we've made things like, celebrating failures be a big part of the program. One of Brene Brown's books is about daring greatly. And so we brought that, we do like awards for daring greatly, like really celebrating the fact that like, you don't know, and you're taking a risk and you're being vulnerable, and really leaning into those sorts of behaviors across the board, not just for the women, obviously. And we've had to do a lot of like one-on-one coaching and kind of just helping people move through it. Like sometimes we joke that we feel like, equal parts like running the program and running like therapy sessions, which is true. I think anytime that you manage people, you start to get into that. But we've just seen like enormous growth from the women in the program. And, again, I mentioned that we graduated our first cohort, and thinking back to our graduation day, we sat down one-on-one with everybody and kind of just like did a little, walk down the last 2 years and where they were when they started versus where they are today. Yeah. And all of the women who are graduating were just like, I feel so different now than I did when I started. Like, I really they say they learned so much about themselves. They feel like they belong now. They feel like they're more comfortable in their own skin at work. Like just those things that's the stuff that, gets me so excited, because that's the stuff that will stick with them, forever. And we've just really seen the impact that focusing on, again, that whole self kind of thing at work, and understanding yourself and some of the ways that you hold yourself back can go such a long way.
Yeah. It's interesting how that sort of connects with, I think, the posture that many of us have before even starting an initiative like this, like, oh, I don't know, little old me, I'm maybe not the right person, or I don't really know, or, and connecting that ability to take that leap, to dare to do something that will have a big impact, or to address a need that you see within the organization. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you heard it even in my own, story of this, and honestly, it happened many, many more times that we haven't talked about here. But yeah, just that, the idea of like why not you, and kind of like what are the risks of actually like putting yourself out there versus not, and then we talk about that a lot with all of the APMs, is just like, if you have something to add or to say, sometimes they worry that it's not the right thing to say, or they're not in the right position to say it. And we're like, what if you had something that was like, really interesting, and you don't say it? Then there's more risk to that than actually putting yourself out there, for sure. And so we try to really focus on that.
We're going to go off and do some one-on-one networking, but before we go off, I think it would be great to kind of bring this a little bit for full circle, which is to talk about some of the benefits that you have seen for the whole organization that has come out of this that maybe you couldn't have anticipated to start with. So
yeah. Some of the obvious ones, like, it helped us really think more about how we develop products, like some of those initial things that I had brought to Brett in that first conversation. And we've gotten a lot more consistency around how we develop products. And it happened in kind of a grassroots sort of way. It's pretty cool to see how when you put these people into all these various teams, they bring the best practices, they bring fresh eyes to that team. They ask, new and different and hard questions of the different team members, and it gets people thinking differently. And so it's been cool to watch that sort of, again, that grassroots way of moving things along. But it's also created a real sense of like connectedness and community, and not just for the people in the program, but again, we have a big network of people who support the APMs. So they have managers and, VP advocates and all these kinds of people. And those people are a part of the community as well. And so now we've gotten people who are more senior in the organization talking to each other and working together in different ways under really different contexts than they normally would, and just developing real relationships with other people. And that, like, those relationships have really helped everybody work better together, on the normal product stuff as well.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that, I know we've talked about before is like, by having people on all these various teams, it's been super fascinating to see. This is like the most unexpected, I think, benefit of the program has been, again, when they're out there on all these different teams, we get this really fascinating bird's eye view of the product organization. And we can see now what teams are, really doing great things and really healthy cultures and great leaders that we've, kind of these like hidden gems in our company that maybe we hadn't, known about before, that we've discovered through their involvement in the program. We see who really is invested in people management and people development. It's gotten us, like really this really interesting view of what's really going on. Like we jokingly call them canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah.
But they really are. Like, they tell us where we have problems. And then we, one of the things that I had shared with Brett when we first started the program was like, we kind of realized that this was going to happen. And we kind of agreed that when they do point out problems, we have to be ready to act on it. We can't just let them, be out there dealing with this stuff. And so it's really just helped us understand, again, that lay of the land, and really know where we should be focusing our time and effort as a broader product organization.
Yeah. I mean, from our conversations that this whole notion of community and how valuable that can be, those personal connections, whether it's across the organization or up or down the organization, they make a huge difference. It's a friend always uses this expression of like, familiarity is the gateway drug to empathy, right? Like if you're familiar with somebody, you start to see the world through their eyes, and it changes how you see things. And that ability to see things from different perspectives, I think, benefits everybody in the organization, because you don't get the, those stupid managers over there, or, that sort of dismissiveness of other people's challenges or position on things. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, Heather, like, all in all, it sounds like the APM program was a great experience for you too.
Yeah, no, it absolutely has been. It's been a game changer, both, I think, like personally and professionally, to run the program. I definitely think about my career and like before that and after that. And it's just been really amazing to see. And I always say still that this is my favorite part of my job. Just exercises so many like different, muscles, I guess, than my normal day to day. I really love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. I have to say, I really am so taken by the whole community aspect of it and that connection part. And I'm pretty sure that being in charge of Trailhead, that community has become a big thing there as well, and that you've probably thought about that. Maybe you want to talk about that for a minute, just community overall, because to me, it's a really, really important topic, and that all of us have community in work in some way, but we don't necessarily think of it overtly.
Yes, totally. The thing I always think of when I think about community is just that as human beings, we're hardwired for connection, and that, having the right community of people around you really allows for that connection and that sense of, I see you as a fellow human. I see things in you that I know in myself. And I think that that in and of itself is an amazing thing, to have that deeper kind of human to human sort of connection with someone else. But I think that, especially from, my day job, as I call it, of leading Trailhead, I've just seen the power of bringing, a lot of like-minded people together, and how, I think people are good. They want to help each other. And that's the other thing that I find so, I don't know, just impactful about communities, is watching when someone reaches out and helps somebody else, not because they have to or anything else, but it's that, because they have that human to human connection with this other person, they do want to do good by them, and they want to help them grow. And that kind of, that network effect that obviously comes from a community, when you see people really reaching out and helping each other and lifting each other up. I don't know, to me, I'm like, that's what life's all about right there.
I totally agree with you. It's like, I think sometimes most of us have experienced this, that when you do something to help somebody else, you feel like you were the bigger beneficiary. Like, just having had that experience makes you feel better about yourself and what you're doing, and more connected to people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of goodness in that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, just knowing that you can have an impact on somebody else, like that, like I had shared before, like the different, that I think is what has like most fundamentally changed me as a person and a leader through leading this program, is just, I don't know, by just leaning into things that I was passionate about, and really, I was doing a lot for other people. I was able to have this impact on so many different people who've shared with me how, being in the program has changed how they relate to their parents and their friends, or, how they see themselves in the world. And this sense of like, I feel like I really can be my whole self here, and really fully, embrace who I am without any fear of, not belonging, like those sorts of things. Like that's that deep impact that, again, that comes from that sense of a real community where you can, be safe and be yourself, and people really do want to help you out. And it just, to me, that's why I say about the before they're leading the program and after. I think as a leader, before leading this program, I was really great at getting stuff done. I knew how to execute the heck out of anything that was given to me. As I've been an ambitious person who is trying to find my next big thing. But the program has really just put such a different spin on leadership and kind of my career in general, where now it's so much more to me about like, how do I help all these other people? And again, like you said, by doing that, I reap tons of, like rewards out of it, but it's not the goal. It wasn't like why I'm doing it. But that this real focus on people and people at work as human beings. I keep thinking of this concept of human leadership, like really, really seeing the people that you work with and valuing them, and letting them know that you see them and value them. Like that's all that anyone really wants anyway. And so how do we build more of that at work? That has sort of become my new, like, I don't know, rally cry, I guess, as a leader.
Yeah. It's really interesting because it brings to mind this thought that I've had for quite a while, which is that so much of what we do at work today is driven by getting things done. And, I am like anybody else. I love that satisfaction of checking something off my list. It just feels really good. But I also have come to see that it's sort of this seductive check things off, but it doesn't really get you focused on impact, right?
Mhm.
So there's this dichotomy sometimes between getting things done and really having an impact, right?
Yes. Yep.
And I think you really know it when you've had an impact, and it almost always involves people, right?
Mhm.
So that's sort of a very, I don't know, profound thing that I've thought about a lot. And I love your thing about human leadership, because I think it's incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
We often within Women in Product talk about placing the women at the center of everything we do. That is our focus,
Yep.
and I think it helps us keep that on track about how do we have an impact to benefit those women.
Yeah.
So
That's mission.
Ariana posted in here, and we'll
Mhm.
wrap up with this. But if you want to talk just your vision for the future of the APM program and any wishes, hopes, dreams for the next phase, I think that's a great place to.
Yeah.
What do we have?
I'll sort of answer this and saying that I think that the next phase for me is really all about, we've had this amazing program. We keep it really small and intimate. So it's only 12 people in a cohort. So it's not like, we're doing a lot of really high touch, like high impact kind of activities with this group of people. But one of the things that has been really cool is, like I was talking about before, is this idea of that has given us a place to really try different things and experiment and rapidly iterate on the program and how we think about leadership at Salesforce or product at Salesforce. And so now what I want to do is I know it works, and I know I'm such like a big believer in all of the things that we've done there. And I shared that it's starting to happen in a very grassroots way, where the stuff that they are learning and the people around the program, it's sort of like rubbing off on the rest of the organization. And I can see that happening slowly. But what we really want to do now is say, okay, what if we went bigger with that? Like, how would we impact more people at Salesforce by doing some of these things at like maybe a lower touch but higher scale kind of programs, and really also just like making it important for everybody, that it's not, we don't have just like a high focus on these things in the APM program specifically, but we have a high focus on these things as, the broader product organization. So again, that whether it's like the human leadership, or whether, it's about leading with empathy and curiosity, like those soft skills, I think can go such a long way for our whole product organization. And, we have more work to do on the hard skills, and consistency across the board as well. And we'll keep tackling those things. But really what I want to find a way to do is just amplify what we've learned from the program in a bigger way at Salesforce. And so that's sort of my next thing that I'm raising my hand for and saying, I want to be the champion of that. And so we're just starting some of that work. But that's my next goal, I think, is keep doing what we're doing with the program. We know it works, but how do we help more people enjoy the benefits of it as well?
That is a great place to stop for today. And, let me just say that would be great if you do that. And if there's anything we can do to support you in doing that, we would love to. And for all of the women who joined us today, I think you're a great inspiration. And I'm hoping that they will take that inspiration and go forth and, find some great initiative to do within their organizations and spread the love.
Yes, for sure. And if there are ways that we can help, let me know too. Would love to help with that. Obviously, lots of passion for this space. So if you're thinking about, starting something at your company, or you see a problem that needs addressing, I hope that you'll, dig in and don't let yourself tell yourself stories about why it's not you. Go and tackle it and fix it, and you'll really benefit from it in many, many different ways.
Yeah. If not you, who?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
All right. I think that's where we will end. And thank you all so much. Thank you, especially Heather, for taking the time out of your
Of
busy
course.
day repeatedly, I must say. So we really appreciate it. It was great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for joining and listening in.
Thanks.
All
Okay.
right.
Bye-bye.